All right, let's talk about the market adoption curve. And what this curve is that I'm going to draw here in a second, what we're talking about is, you know how when you introduce a new product into the marketplace or a new brand into the marketplace, it takes a while until that product or that brand has been adopted by the market. And so the question is, number one is, how long is it going to take? Well, that depends on a few variables, but we'll talk about that. And then the next question is, why is it some people are willing to try it in the beginning, whereas a lot of people are not so willing to try it in the beginning, and it takes them a while to come on board. You know that when you introduce a new product or brand in the marketplace, it takes marketing dollars and it takes a lot of effort from your sales team in order to reach your sales goals, right? So what's realistic and how do you figure all that out? Well, when I'm first working with a company, and they've hired me to help them with this. There's so many components of this. I just want to break down a few of them from a 30,000 foot view so that you get an idea of what's involved in the task and the work to come up with the answers to that. So the first thing I want to do is, if you're hiring me to work for your company, I want to know what is the market opportunity for this category or these products that you make or represent. So let's say, for example, here's the whole market, and this whole market is worth, I don't know, $100 million, right? So usually in most of the markets I work in, not all of them, because this rule doesn't apply to all of them, but it seems there's always a dominant competitor, somebody who has the most market share, and then there's a number two that's right behind them or close to them. I mean, you can think of examples probably like in the car industry or in soft drinks, Coca-Cola and Pepsi, right? Or something like that. So let's say in this example that there's a 25% or 25% market dominator, number one competitor in there, and then the number two has 15%. And then after that, you've got a bunch of players who have, somewhere around 10, 12%. And you have even more that have anywhere from, 1 to 5% of small players in the market. So one of the things I want to do is look at what is your brand or, your product that you're offering, what's unique about it. What are the client or the customer advantages of that product? How do we compare to the competition when it comes to quality, when it comes to price, when it comes to delivery? All the components that go into making a brand or a product loved and successful. I want to know what those are, about how we gauge, as a company and as our product compared to all these competitors that are out here. And this is part of the download process that I get in working with the teams who have experience working for these companies and know their industry very well. So after I've determined this, now let's say, for example, that the majority of the players are at that 1 to 5% range. I want to look at how long did it take them to get there and why haven't they moved into the next category. So if a lot of newbie players are in that 1 to 5% range and they've just started in the last few years, it tells me that we should be able to, with reasonable effort and marketing budget, be able to get into that category and get to that, let's say 5 to 10%. I mean, that would be our first step goal, 5 to 10% market share as quickly as possible. So if we can do that, then the 10% would represent what $10 million does. Now, what's funny about this, in annual sales we're talking about, what's funny about this is I was meeting with a big retailer, this retailer, the buyer, was in charge of a certain category. And in that category, there's a subcategory of that category. And that's what he and I were meeting about, because I represent a factory in China that makes those products that are in that subcategory. And after a little bit of earning his trust and so forth, he shared with me what the annual sales is for just this subcategory. And it was $65 million a year. Now, $65 million a year, and he had it split up among 3 different factories. So each factory, now they're not getting that, so the retailer is obviously marking those prices up and so forth, but you can see that there's a lot of market opportunity in the US because that was just one retailer, and that retailer competes with so many other retailers who also probably have about the same sales in that subcategory as well. So just to kind of gauge that and give you a perspective, that's what it is. So let's say, for example, now we're talking about this $10 million that's up for grab for us to introduce into the marketplace and get that part of that market share. What's the market adoption curve look like? You may have seen this before, but it looks something like this, okay? And it goes like this. There's 4 sections of this, and we call this one, the early adopter stage. These are the people that are part of the masses out there, or part of the people that you're contacting as prospective customers, that are quick or early to adopt a new product or a new brand. Now, if this same rule applies to a new factory. So if let's say for example, we're talking about, I'm just going to name a category here, like wheels, right? Car tires. And let's say that all of the auto parts stores and all the people who buy tires know of these certain factories in China that make tires for them, right? And now I'm coming in and I'm representing a new factory that they've never heard of. This same curve applies to that new factory because they've never heard of it. So there's some people that in the very beginning are going to be willing to try our factory and are very open to trying new factories and new vendors, and they're called early adopters, okay? So the next is going to be what we call the early majority. So the early majority falls into this category, and that's a big part of the whole lion's share of the market. What happens after these people try it, have good success stories and so forth, the early majority, they're the ones that had to take a kind of wait and see position, and then they say, oh, this is working, right? Now, the next group is the late majority, still in that majority center there, but they're the people that are just a little bit slower to make change or to try a new product and so forth. And the last one is and you can guess it here by the initials, late adopters. They're the ones that are late to the party just to come on board and try new products. They resist change and they're not open to it and so forth, but eventually they do come around. So the question is, the big question is the timeline, you know, from here to here, when you start till you've got full market share. And it doesn't mean your sales are not going like this. This is just a picture of the customer base. Your sales are continuing to go like this as you get more customers, right? But the question is, how long does that take? So it's dependent upon a few variables. I wrote a few of them down here. So like I said in the beginning, I started to mention a little bit about it. What's our offer? What is our offer that we're communicating to the buyers of why they should buy our product, why they should buy our brand, or why they should meet with us so they can consider us as a potential supplier. Depends on what we're talking about here. Our USP, our unique selling proposition. What makes us different than the competitors? If everything we have is an exact duplicate of the current supplier that they're already established with and so forth, why would they consider us? So for example, in China, there's so many factories that are making the same products, right? So when I'm representing a factory in China, I'm trying to find something unique about the company that differentiates us from all the competition, because I've got to create a little bit of interest on the buyer's part so that he's just interested enough to want to meet with me. And if everything sounds the same, I'm not going to be successful getting that meeting. Now, if you're a salesperson out there and you're selling a product and you're saying the same message about your product and company as every other salesperson out there, you're going to have a very hard time, and it's going to be very slow for you to be successful. You have to find those things about your product and your company that's unique and play on those. What are the customer benefits? Because so many times, especially with Chinese factories, they talk about how their company is ISO certified and how they have over 500 workers and they have so many square meters of factory space. And notice what's going on here. We're talking about the company or the customer? The company, the company, the company. We're not talking about the customer at all. We have to incorporate into our message some type of customer benefit. It should be all about the customer, actually, right? But we tend to see the world as a factory owner, as a sales manager, or whatever, through our company glasses, right? And we're thinking about our company, we want to brag about it and so forth, but every company has a unique story. Every company has those same kind of accolades or recognition that they are eager to share, and that doesn't make the buyer want to do business with you. What makes the buyer want to do business with you if you solve a pain or provide a benefit to that buyer. Buying is an emotional decision. If he likes us and wants to do business with us, it's because of that emotion that he felt, that he was interested first to have the meeting and that he liked us and liked who we are and wants to work with us because he believes we're going to solve some pain. And then the buyer will use logic to justify his emotional decision so that it looks logical, but the reality was that it's emotional. I have a whole nother training on that we can talk about another time. But next is the message. What is the message that we're giving to customers? This is another video I'm going to do very shortly just on this because it's so important that companies get a consistent message. It means I've seen companies where the salespeople are out doing their own thing. They're talking to customers, and if I ride with 3 salespeople in a week and go meet with customers, I'll hear a different story, a different message given from one salesperson, the next salesperson, the next salesperson that they're given to customers. It's not the same story. In fact, sometimes it's not the same story. It changes with one salesperson. It changes from customer to customer because they kind of wing it, right? That message or story should come from the top down, and it should say, here's what you say to customers. And this is especially critical on voicemails and emails. Okay, because you're going to email prospective customers, prospects, more often than you're going to talk to them, and you're going to get voicemail when you call them more often than you're going to get a live person, and that message should sound consistent. Now, here's the other part about it. That message should be consistent with your marketing message. Your marketing materials should sound the same as what your salespeople are saying. The story about your company, your product, your benefit that you give to customers. How you help customers should be integrated into your story so that the prospective customer hears right away what the benefit would be from partnering with you. Also, trade shows. This is a big one too. So every year when I was a national sales manager at a big company where we would get together in Las Vegas for the annual convention or annual trade show in our industry, the biggest one. And you've seen it before. We'd have a powwow. All the salespeople get around, and it's to kick off before all the attendees come into the show. It's to kick off the trade show, and I'm telling the salespeople and reminding them again, here's our message. When people come up, prospective customers, here's the questions we ask to qualify them, and then here's the benefit that we tell them that people tell us they get from doing business with us or from buying our product. Here's the pain that we solve, right? And then we close for the appointment for the local salesperson to come in and meet with them. But this message in most organizations is not consistent, and it's so important to be consistent. If you hit on all these things and we fine-tune these things across the organization, the next thing is how's it going to be executed? Like I was mentioning about emails, right? You're not just going to keep emailing the same customer, the same email over and over again and say, can I get an appointment? Can I get an appointment? I'm going to be in your area on Wednesday. No, it doesn't work. You should have a email campaign, a strategy, right? And so we want to create the next 10 to 12 emails, knowing that they're not going to reply to everyone. There will be some people that do right away. There will be some people that wait and then do later, and so forth. There's an adoption curve with that as well. So that's why I want a drip campaign that drip, drip, drip hits and touches the customer multiple times, knowing that sometimes he's not going to see the email. Other times he's going to briefly glance it, so it's got to be worded correctly and stuff. But the idea is that we need a plan, a strategy of how all this story about our message, about our unique selling proposition, about our offer, what makes us different, the unique benefits that customers get, we want to communicate that to the target customer mix. Now, the reason I say the mix is so important because this is also going to determine how long this adoption curve is, right? So in some industries, you just have one type of customer. Let's say it's home builders, right? And so you've got small, medium, and large home builders. Well, the rule of thumb is the smaller, if this is small customers, the smaller the customer, the shorter the sales cycle. Means from the time I first contact them until they place an order, is a very short amount of time. If you're dealing with, let's say you're selling advertising for a local newspaper or for a radio station, and you're meeting with mom and pop businesses and restaurants, they can make a decision. It's a one-call close sometimes. They can make a decision right there. Here's my pricing. Here's a quarter-page ad. Here's a half-page ad, and so forth. And they're able to make that decision. Whereas then you're meeting with a mid-sized company. Maybe there's a couple of people that you have to convince. You first meet with a person who qualifies you and says, okay, we're interested in this. This falls within our budget. I need to bring you back and have the owner of the company or the president of the company in that meeting and so forth. So, maybe a couple appointments, and then finally you get the sale. And then lastly, you have the large customers. And you should have in your mix, you should always have a group that we call our dream customers. These are the customers that if you win, it puts you on the scoreboard for the year. It makes your year, basically, okay? And even though it takes so long to win those orders, because sometimes it takes 1 to 3 to 5 years, depending on the industry that you're in, to land one of those dream clients, then you might as well start now, right? Because it's going to take a long time. So the mix is important, just as important as the other steps of this process. And if we get all that right, it's going to help us shorten that adoption curve a little bit. So this is just a brief overview of what I do when I'm working with a company to help them in these areas and define this and create our strategy and our execution plan and fine-tune everything so that we're performing as well as we can with our sales team. Now, in the next video, I'm going to talk about sales training that I do with sales teams and salespeople and talk about why this learning curve is so important when it comes to buy-in from sales reps as they're going through sales training, because most times salespeople, a majority of the salespeople are kind of in a wait-and-see attitude if number one, if the sales tactics work, if they're genuine, if they seem like they work, if they seem like they would actually solve problems for the salespeople. And so this buy-in is very important. And again, there's multiple different key performance indicators that if you use those, you'll be able to see that your sales team is buying in, and then they're going to get the results that you expect from a sales training program. So watch for that video if you're interested in it. I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks.